Good afternoon, everybody. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and we're very happy to be here in Mount Kisco for the beginning of a series of efforts that takes our veteran services programs in Westchester County and makes an outreach into various communities around Westchester County. I'm joined here by our Director of Veteran Services, Ron Tocci, who will be speaking in a couple of minutes. I also have with us Legislator Kitley, who represents this area of Westchester County on the County Board of Legislators. She'll be speaking in a moment, since all of us like to speak. State Assemblyman David Buchwald is with us today, and also the Mayor of Mount Kisco, who's hosting us today, Gina Piccinich. We're also going to recognize with us, behind us and elsewhere in the room, a number of people who are very prominent in the Veterans Organization movement. We want to recognize the commander of the American Legion here in Mount Kisco, Roger Guest, a longtime past commander. He's done just about everything you can think of in the veterans movement. Don Ford is also with us here from this area, this post. Al Bender from the Larchmont American Legion post. John Kresge from the Valhalla American Legion post. And Richie Calbo, who's had every job under the sun. I guess Sergeant of Arms at the state or department level of New York would be the highest of the many responsibilities he's had. And we have many vendors, people who are here providing a variety of services, both inside government and outside of government, for our veterans community. The situation is pretty simple. The men and women who have served our nation in the uniform of our nation, whatever the branch of service, and we hear the various Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard guys all arguing behind us, but the bottom line is every single one of them has served this nation in wartime and in peacetime. They've given up years of their life. They've gone through basic training, men and women. They've had to put on hold their family life to serve this nation. And they deserve not just the respect, not just the credit, not just the little proclamations and the plaques that we give them, but they deserve special services. And when someone says, does anybody deserve special treatment? Yes, I think our veterans do, because they put their life on the line. Some of them saw active duty in wartime and risked their lives. But even those who didn't served. And they served in situations where even in peacetime there's a certain amount of danger to what happens. How many times we pick up a newspaper, hear a television story about even in a practice run, an equipment vehicle crashes and people die who served in our military. So we owe a great debt of gratitude. And the services of the county's veteran organization, under the direction of Ron Tocci, a veteran himself, 82nd Airborne, Ron? 82nd Airborne, served during the Vietnam era, represents an effort by the county to be a partner with our veterans communities. Now, the federal government lays out the basic benefits for veterans, but dealing with bureaucracies can be very difficult. Dealing with the county bureaucracy is difficult. Dealing with the federal bureaucracy is even harder. So Ron and his staff, Dan Griffin, Christine, the other people here, Jeff and others, are there to try to help veterans, particularly because it's hard to navigate all of the systems of benefits that exist. And so to have somebody who's there fighting for you, in some cases, it's Ron and his team putting a phone call in, a letter in to some higher level of government to try to get something done for a veteran. That is what this mission is. And I might say Ron has done this before my tenure began. I was very happy that he agreed to stay on and serve his county again in our new administration, having served in the past administration, which tells you that we take veteran services above the level of politics. We don't want these programs to be involved in the day-to-day back and forth. We want it to be something that all of us agree in the society that we're committed to. Whatever political party you're in, whatever your political philosophies are, we view veterans together in a positive, cohesive fashion. So to bring the services here to Mount Kisco, Ron, we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, is the beginning of a process, and we intend to do this in other parts of Westchester County. There's a practical reality. Westchester is a big county, 30 some odd miles from north to south. When you live in one part of the county, it's not always easy to get to White Plains, so the mountain should come to you, and that's exactly what today is about here in Mount Kisco. And by the leadership of Ron and his team, we intend to do this in other parts of the county, and we hope what we're doing is reaching more veterans by being in their backyard. So it's a short trip from Bedford or from Lewisboro or from Newcastle or what have you to come to Mount Kisco, as it would be then to go all the way down to White Plains. But with that, I want to ask our legislator for the region, Kitley Covill, to address us for a few minutes, and she was insistent that we do the first program here in this area of the county. And who's going to say no to Kitley Covill? She's bright and hardworking, and we're very grateful that she's serving us in the county legislature. Kitley.
Thank you. I have to give credit where credit is due, which is the Veterans Advisory Board really brought to my attention early on that a lot of veterans were not getting the services that they've earned. And I'm so happy that we're starting in Mount Kisco, because many of the northern veterans in the northern part of the county don't know or feel that White Plains is practically in New York City for all their purposes. So I'm super happy that we have this here. I will say that I was at an event on Friday night, and I talked to a Vietnam vet that I've known for a long time. I said, "Do you get benefits?" He said, "Yeah, it took me 40 years." That's what we want to avoid, and that's what we're trying to make sure people know, is that there are benefits. Even if today somebody came in and said, "I had no idea I could get burial benefits." So there's so many benefits that people don't know about, and getting from that starting process of an application to obtain your benefits can be very frustrating. So I'm so pleased we're here with accredited people who can appear before the Veterans Administration with clients who have come to them, and we hope more veterans will avail themselves of our services in Westchester County. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kitley. I'd like to make sure we introduce, for recognition purposes, that Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, who represents this area, was unable to be here today, but he sent one of his finest young aides. Cullen Lyons, who's with us here, we appreciate him being here, is himself a veteran of the Afghanistan War, U.S. Army, and so he's here both on behalf of the Congressman and as a veteran in his own right. Cullen, thank you for your service, and thank you for your service. Thank you for being with us today. I'm going to save Ron as the last point, because he's got the most amount of substance to share with us. But Assemblyman David Buchwald has been a terrific advocate for veterans in the New York State Assembly. Now, I served in that body, and Ron served in that body for 20 years, headed the Veterans Committee of the New York State Assembly, and advanced a lot of different legislation. But David, as part of a current Assembly delegation and Senate delegation, has been very diligent on veterans issues. So David, share a few thoughts with us, if you would.
Thank you, George, and thanks to my colleagues in government, of course, the county executive, county legislator Covill, Mayor Piccinich, and Director Tocci and your staff. Always a pleasure to work with, but obviously today is as much about thanking the men and women who have served our country ably and defended the freedoms that we cherish each and every day. Those of us in government have a special responsibility to work day in and day out to do everything we can to convey on behalf of the people we represent that appreciation. We do that, of course, in part for those who could not return home. Right now, the governor has in front of his desk a bill that State Senator Shelley Mayer and I carried to name a bridge here in Westchester after a fallen airman. But it is particularly important that the people of Westchester convey to all their friends and neighbors who have served and continue to serve as veterans, because veterans are so important to the core of our communities, what resources are available, and to have an opportunity like this under the county government to bring both government agencies, educational institutions, and not-for-profits together in a form of outreach is essential, so that we make sure every veteran knows that there are services that are available to them that not only are they entitled to, but that we affirmatively as a society want to make sure they gain the full benefit of, because it's the least we can do in appreciation for everything that we enjoy throughout our society day in and day out under our great Constitution. So with that, let me convey again my appreciation to everyone involved in putting together this event, and the fact that it's going to be a part of a further set of outreach going forward. Just honored that it got initiated here in northeastern Westchester. This is a great assembly district, but in part made great by the veterans who are part and parcel of our community. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker, the mayor of Mount Kisco, is a citizen who decided that she wanted to make a positive impact on her community, ran for mayor and became mayor, and is not, as some of us will have to accept the title, some long-term public official, politician, if you will. In that regard, the first great military hero in this country was George Washington, who was not a politician, but he was a person who was asked to come in to organize the Continental Army, did so and won the war against the Brits, went back to his farm, was called back into service to be President of the United States in the same way that Gina is called into service to guide her community. So we're very happy to have Mayor Gina Piconich, who's just been compared to George Washington.
That's a pretty tall glass of water.
I wasn't asleep in politician school, was I? Madam Mayor, thank you. It's good to see you.
Oh my goodness. My message is really, really very simple. Firstly, thank you all for being here in our beautiful village here in Mount Kisco. You know, government works best with great leadership and when people come together. And so what's happening here today is all about making sure that veterans have a clear understanding of the earned services that they should avail themselves to. And some of the things that we were discussing just a little bit earlier was the fact that veterans have this independent and strong streak that don't always recognize that they can reach out, that they can go to other places in order to get not only services but help. So the bottom line message here is you've earned it, come and get it. So if you're out there today, feel free to come down to our Legion post, which is an incredible place here in Mount Kisco. And know that if you keep a broad eye out, there'll be other opportunities across the county as well. So thank you all for hosting this here, for having this here in Mount Kisco.
Thank you, Gina. And now, most importantly, our Director of Veteran Services, Ron Tocci. As I mentioned, he has experience serving his country in the uniform of his country. He served as both a county legislator and a state assemblyman. And now in this service, which he's been doing for a number of years, he provides a benefit to his brother and sister veterans. So, Ron?
Thanks, George. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here today, and special thanks to all our service providers that are really the ground forces that make our operation work. I think it's important to acknowledge that this initiative was really the county executive, George Latimer. When I first was asked by George to stay on, he asked me, he said, what can we do better than what we're doing already? And one of the things that I know is that it's almost impossible to find people that have served and those that are serving that are coming out of active service and that need help. And because we are, and I always call ourselves the best kept secret in the county for veterans, people have no idea where to go for help when they're discharged from active duty. And they bounce around, and depending upon what their problem may be, they go see civilians and so on. But it shouldn't be like that. And we have no way of identifying people coming out of service. The Department of Defense has a policy in place since World War II where they don't allow the names of anybody serving to be distributed out to even government agencies. So even though we have contacts with the National Guard and so on, which is a state agency, we can identify people that are serving, but we don't know when they're discharged, and we don't know who they are, where they live. And if someone is discharged from Fort Ord, California, or Fort Hood, Texas, or Fort Sill, Oklahoma, we have no idea that they live in New York, that they're coming back home, and how do we contact them? So in explaining that to the county executive, he asked us, he said, what can we do? I said, the best thing we can do is possibly go out and try to find them. And he said, okay, let's do an outreach program. So I want to thank the county executive personally for offering, advice and allowing this to happen. And as he suggested, this is the first of many. We'll go to different municipalities to try to make ourselves more visible and explain all of the kinds of services that we can provide for those that you've heard earn this over the years of service to our nation. So this is the first one outside of the colleges. We've already done a lot of the college tours, hopefully getting a lot of young people coming back, taking advantage of the GI Bill where they can get their education furthered and so on. But we're reaching out to any municipality that wants to host us someplace, and a Legion post or a VFW post or anything like that would be most appropriate. And we will continue to do this throughout the year in the hope that we'll gain a few people Today, we had about a half a dozen veterans who came in that actually want to file claims. And I have two of my veteran service officers here, Dana Verisamo and Danny Griffin, and they are willing to take information and provide you with the direction and help you need. So all of these things are happening because we do have someone who really does care. And again, the county executive is someone who is actually walking, not just doing the talking. And we are very, very helpful to try to make this a reality in making things better. George mentioned George Washington, and the mayor obviously is compared now to George Washington, something special. But I always like to quote George Washington, who's my favorite president. When he resigned from the Continental Services, and he suggested that the willingness of future generations to serve in time of war, no matter how justified, is directly proportional to the way they think we treat the people of the last wars. So this is a classic example of what George Washington was talking about. Let's make people understand, God forbid something happens to them and they're not around to take care of their families, or if they're unable to take care of their families, we have to be taking care of them. Nothing greater than the taking care of the people who take care of us. So God bless everybody. Thank you so much. I want to thank my staff, Christine, as well as Danny and Dana, as I suggested, Jeff DeMario, and so many. We do this every day, and it's really a privilege. It's not just a job. So God bless all of you, and God bless our troops. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rodney, stay right there. We're going to open it up to questions, but you can have a round of applause. That's worthy. So we'll open it up to any questions from the press, either on specific programs, any of the vendors that are here, or any of the broader issues, anything you think might be interesting to your readers or to your viewers. Martin?
How often do you hope to hold these?
Well, this is the first one, and I guess, in theory, we could do as many of them as we feel we have the time and effort to do.
We have a full staff.
Ron, why don't you come on mic so they can pick you up on camera?
Our office is fully staffed. We're in White Plains right now, and anybody can call us. We're there 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and we have emergency hotlines too in the event somebody needs us. This particular event today is the first of probably several. We'll plan it out. Obviously, we try to make it visible so more people will know where we are, when we are. It's difficult during the summer. A lot of people are away on vacation and so on. We also, directed by the county executive, to do classrooms where we go to the schools when they're back in session. And we find that a lot of the little kids, especially in grammar school, they go home and tell their parents. That's the best way to spread the gospel. So we're going to do as many as possible. We'll have a schedule published probably in the next few weeks.
I know the types of services probably run the gamut.
Yes.
But what are some examples, maybe some better known and some lesser known services that maybe many veterans have no idea that they may be able to?
Well, a lot of people come to us for information about service-connected disabilities, and we file claims, and that's the number one really priority. After that, there are people that come to us need counseling services. They may be post-stressed, and that's always a difficult thing to do, but we have all kinds of references, and we have different agencies that do that. We have people that call us up because they need a job. We have people looking for educational benefits. We have people looking for housing. We have all kinds of different ideas about how we can best help these people. We are in the process of forming a portal that will be the Veteran Service Agency with a listing of all the services that are available for veterans throughout the county. And if people want to call in, tell us what their problem is. If we can't solve it, we know who can solve it. So we're in the process of making that list available to everybody. And we've had two major roundtable meetings now trying to compile the whole group of people that are either volunteer or professional services.
And I just want to amplify a point that Ron made and sort of differentiate it. We had, during World War II and during the Vietnam War, full conscription drafts. So most of the society, the young men of the society in those two wars, were brought into the military and had to serve. Since we've had the volunteer army, it's a much smaller group of people, and it's much harder to be able to track that. So if you think about the post-war era, just before I was born, my dad's generation, the society provided benefits to veterans because almost everybody was a returning veteran or was in a veteran family. Now it's a spot situation, and Ron's office deals with veterans who are senior citizens whose service might have been Vietnam, maybe Korea, and a handful of those that are still with us from World War II. And that's very different from the needs of somebody who served in Desert Shield in the early 90s, or Afghanistan since 2003, and in Iraq, or some of the other places where we've been at war around the world. Somebody who's 32 years old and a veteran has a different set of needs than somebody who's 72, and then somebody who's 85, 90, 95 years old. And that's an interesting challenge that Ron and his team has, depending on who comes in the front door. And I might add one more time through, the younger veterans have not joined the traditional veteran organizations the way predecessor veterans did. So there was a time when you could go to the American Legion, VFW, Jewish war vets, and so forth, and have a concentration of the veteran community there. Now younger vets are more isolated, more alone, and it takes greater outreach to reach them, to find them and to reach them, and then provide benefits that you would need if you're in that age category with those needs. Particularly if you come back from your service and you have PTSD or you picked up some particular type of illness while you were in service in one of these difficult places in the world. So that helps understand the complications of what comes in the front door at the veterans' offices. Other questions? Yes?
At some juncture, would you consider opening one at the Veterans Hospital at Montrose, one of these outreach for veterans? That's just something that I was thinking.
Yeah, no, Kingsbridge for sure,
Yeah.
which is the main center for treatment for veterans with all kinds of ailments. I go down there at least a couple of times a month, and the county executive understands that that's the main treatment center. So we have all kinds of services, and we have seminars, and they have all kind of posts there, and we do make ourselves available to them. So we already do that, and we will continue to do that. But a lot of Westchester people go down to Kingsbridge because both Montrose and Castle Point, even though they're veteran facilities, they don't do operations, they don't do kidney dialysis. Basically, they're treated for some kind of post-traumatic stress or addiction problems, and that's about it. Otherwise, it's outpatient clinic services. So if you have something seriously wrong with you, you go down to Kingsbridge. County executive is working with me right now trying to make Valhalla Medical Center a women's health center run by and paid for by the VA. And we're on the verge of making that happen. Hopefully it will happen soon. And that would mean that instead of the female population in the military, which is growing now, it's 15%. And they expect within the next 3 years it'll be 40%. Instead of them having to go to New York, where the Kingsbridge facility in the Bronx does not treat women because they weren't equipped and prepared for this influx of females serving now, they farm everything out to different hospitals. So hopefully this will work. They'll be able to go to Valhalla, and it'll be a much, much better operation for everybody. But the answer to your question is we already do that at the hospital. Thank you.
Other questions? And you're welcome to interview Ron or anybody else one-on-one when we're finished here, which may give you, more depth to your story. Yes?
Yeah, do you know how many veterans there may be in Westchester County and how many you plan on connecting through this program?
Yeah, there's probably still 50,000 veterans in our county. A lot of them are elderly now, and about 26,000 are probably in the veteran system, service-connected disabilities and so on. So like the county executive suggested, it's very diverse, the needs of the different groups. And, we do the best we can. We're learning as everybody else. But as the county exec suggested, these young people today coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan are all volunteers. First time since the Revolutionary War, all volunteer service. There are less than 1 million active personnel in all branches of service throughout the United States. That is really remarkable. Less than 0.5% taking care of 340 million people. So we do owe them a debt of gratitude, and certainly we have to take care of them.
I I'd just like to add one other thing that we are doing that is a new initiative, which is to send everyone who is identified as a veteran in long-term care on Medicaid a letter saying there may be other things that you are available to you, and we're also going to send an annual recertification. They have to annually recertify. We're going to send a letter then to all the identified vets on Medicaid saying, please contact us. There may be things that you don't know that are available to you that we can help you get from the VA. So.
And let me just add one other thing to this as well. Ron and his office have been very active in helping with military records, being able to achieve recognitions that were deserved by individuals in their military service and for one reason or another wasn't conveyed, or oftentimes for the family of somebody who's deceased, who has served and was entitled to some recognition. So we focused on health and other issues. Sometimes it is about the recognition that comes from the branch of service. And the surviving spouse of a veteran might not know how to go about doing this and wants to do this to honor her husband. And Ron and his team has gotten very involved in doing this. And it is, it's a tough bureaucracy to work through, so you really do need an advocate to do that. And so that too is part of what they do. So why don't I stop the general questioning. Feel free to interview any of the individuals that are here in a one-on-one basis. It's probably a better story there than whatever I'm going to say. But thank you for coming, and most importantly, thank you for your service.